I'm Alec Pecado. Welcome to the Baseball Banter podcast. On today's episode, we have a lot to cover. I'm going to talk about multiple topics, including talking about the contract situation between Vlad Guerrero Jr. and the Blue Jays, as well as the Rays owner Stu Sternberg potentially selling the team, and much, much more. Let's jump right into it, and we're going to start off with talking about Vlad Jr. and the Blue Jays. So, basically, to spin it backwards, Vlad Jr. gave the Blue Jays, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. gave the Blue Jays till spring training to figure out a new contract extension with him. And there was a couple different offers on the table from the Blue Jays to Vlad Jr. But Vlad Jr. obviously turned those down because he wants to get the same amount of money or more money than what Juan Soto got to sign with the Mets. Guerrero Jr. wants that kind of money with the Blue Jays, and I'm not going to say he doesn't deserve it, but I don't think he's earned the right to that kind of money for Toronto yet. And we don't even know what the Blue Jays are going to do this year, whether they did make a couple significant moves in the offseason, signing Jeff Hoffman, who's probably going to end up being their guy in the ninth inning. And they also did sign Anthony Santander in the offseason. But my one question to Blue Jays fans is, and all MLB fans, especially Toronto, who would you rather keep between Bichette and Guerrero Jr.? Would you rather keep Vladdy or would you rather keep Bo Bichette? Because the overwhelming majority right now is that the Blue Jays are looking to keep Vlad Jr. and build around him while letting Bo Bichette hit free agency and go somewhere else, which I'm sorry, I don't really know if I agree with that, because we all know if Bo Bichette goes to free agency, we know the number one team that's going to be in on him. And yes, I understand that Mookie Betts is playing shortstop for the Dodgers right now, but we all know that eventually Mookie's probably going to move back out to the outfield, and they're going to need a shortstop. And if Bichette becomes available either at the trade deadline, if Toronto's out of it, which I have my ALE standings prediction later on in this episode of the pod. But if he becomes available, you know the Dodgers aren't going to be afraid to go out and make that kind of move for him and trade for a guy like Bo Bichette. And if they do, come back to the episode number 9 of the Baseball Banter podcast and tell me what you think. But right now, that's neither here nor there. The Blue Jays, I still think they're going to have a decent year, but you'll see what my record for them is later on. We get to the second part of the show, and it is my 3 players to watch in spring training. And yes, it's 3 young guys. It's 3 guys that are probably going. One of them, we know for a fact, will make his team's opening day roster. It's a starting pitcher. The other 2 are outfielders that there's potential for them to make the opening day roster, but we'll have to see. And number 3 is Chandler Simpson of the Tampa Bay Rays. And to those of you that know, yes, I'm a diehard Rays fan, and this is completely non-biased. If you haven't watched any of Chandler Simpson's tape, any of his highlights, Highly recommend it. The kid stole over 100 bases in the minors last year, hit over 300. Doesn't have a lot of pop, but he does hit for average. He gets little check swing numbers out front of the plate, and it ends up being a single, and then he steals second. He stole over 100 bases last year between in the minor leagues. And that's self-explanatory. Now, do I think, what are his chances of making the opening day roster for the Tampa Bay Rays? Right now, it probably sits at, I'm going to say 40 to 55% chance that he makes the opening day roster. Seeing as the Rays did put Jake Mangum on the 40-man, and maybe they want Simpson to be an everyday guy, and maybe he goes down to AAA, and if somebody gets hurt, or if Jake Mangum struggles, then maybe Chandler Simpson's the next man up, and he gets called up and plays maybe a platoon role to start out with maybe Johnny DeLuca, Josh Lowe, Christopher Morel, Richie Palacios, somewhere along those lines until because we know he can hit. My thing is, how many bases, when he gets to the big leagues, how many bases is he going to steal? Is he going to steal over 100 bases? Is he going to be the next Ellie? Where getting on base is easy for him and stealing bases is easy, but he does have a low strikeout rate, and he does walk a lot. So Chandler Simpson's my number 3 player to watch during spring. My number 2 player to watch is a guy that was hurt off and on last year, prospect in a Rocky system, outfielder Zach Veen. I've watched a few because I do have the MLB plan for spring training. I have watched a few of the Rocky spring training games that Zach Veen has been part of. And one of them, he launched an absolute nuke out to left field, out to right field. And the broadcasters were talking about, that's what they want to see from Zach Veen, is they want to see that opposite field power. They know he's got a good arm in the outfield. And yes, this outfield is not very good. Yeah, I mean, you've got Brent Doyle in center, who's one of the best center fielders in baseball. Then you've got Nolan Jones in left. And, I mean, what Nolan Jones are we going to get? Are we going to get the Nolan Jones that we got Nolan Jones' rookie year where he was really good? Or are we going to get the Nolan Jones we got last year where he was good for half the season and in half the season he was just horridly awful? I would stand to think that Nolan Jones is going to be better than he was last year. And in right field, you've got a mixture of Jordan Beck, crippled Chris Bryant, who can't stay healthy, who's probably going to DH a lot and play the outfield, play right or left field. And then that's where Zach Veen comes into the mix. Do the Rockies think he's ready to be their opening day right fielder every day? I think they do after what they've seen so far in spring training. And I would be shocked if Zach Veen is sent back down to AAA or the minor leagues after spring training. Now, what's the percent chance he makes the opening day roster for the Rockies? Right now, it probably stands at like 74, 75% chance. But if he keeps mashing and hitting the way he is and playing good defense, that could easily go up to 80 to 85%, maybe 90. And the number 1 player to watch in spring training for me is Tigers pitcher Jackson Joe, who came up at the end of last year, pitched a little bit at the end of last year. He is going to be the number 5 starting pitcher in the Tigers rotation. And you will hear where I have the Tigers rotation ranked and my top 10 starting pitcher rankings in a second. But with Jackson Jobe, he's got a fastball that's just nasty, a slider, curve. I'm going to give you a little teaser. I'm doing a video with my co-host of this said podcast tomorrow night, and we're going to go over our Rookie of the Year picks, and he is somebody you might see me pick for AL Rookie of the Year tomorrow night. Make sure you tune in to tomorrow night's show at 5:45 p.m. Anyway, now we get to my top 10 starting rotations at number 10. And I'm going to get a lot of criticism for this. I know I am, because I know a lot of Yankees fans that watch the show. Number 10 is the New York Yankees. Their rotation right now consists of Clark Schmidt at the 5, the 4, Luis Hill, 3, Carlos Rodon, 2, Max Fried, and 1, Garrett Cole. So there's a lot of potential in this rotation. But the question is, can this rotation hold up and stay healthy for an entire season? We saw Garrett Cole missed a portion of last year. Max Fried missed a lot of time last year with injuries. Carlos Rodon was healthy. Luis Hill was a breakout, in my mind, a breakout star for the Yankees in their rotation last year. And then you had Clark Schmidt, who took it to another level. If this rotation could stay healthy the entire year, I have absolutely no problem with putting them in the top 5 at the end of the season. When I do this starting rotation thing again, and yes, there's going to be some teams you don't see in this top 10 starting pitcher rankings because they just were outside the top 10. We get to number 9 on the list. Number 9 on my top 10 starting pitchers list. It is the San Francisco Giants, with a rotation consisting of the 5 spot being Kyle Harrison, the 4 being Jordan Hicks, the 3 being the KG veteran Justin Verlander, the 2 spot being the 3 spot being Robbie Ray, 2 being Justin Verlander, and the ace being Logan Webb, who's getting the opening day start. I really like this rotation for the Giants, but the one issue I have with putting them higher is, are we going to get a full year? 1, we saw some glimmers of a promising future for Kyle Harrison. Can he build off of that this year, for 1? And 2, what version of Justin Verlander are we going to get? Are we going to get the version of Justin Verlander we got before all these injuries? Or are we going to get the one we got last year where he was decent when he came back from injury with the Astros? But then, of course, we know they didn't re-sign him. And yes, no, the Astros are not in this. They were one of the teams that finished outside the top 10 of my starting pitcher ranking, top 10 starting pitchers, starting rotations for 2025. But and I'll get into it in a minute after I get done with the top 10. Tell you some honorable mentions I had. But so the Giants were number 9. Number 8 rotation for me going into the 2025 baseball season is the Philadelphia Phillies, with personally one of my favorite rotations in baseball. The 5 spot is a guy that used to be in the Rays system, Christopher Sanchez, who has blossomed into a, dare I say, star in Philly as the number 5 guy in the rotation. Number 4 in that rotation is Jesus Luzardo, The 3 spot belongs to a guy that had a really, really good second half last year, but then fizzled out in the playoffs. And Ranger Suarez. And then, the top 2, Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler. That's a good, in my opinion, that's a good one, top 3 in that rotation, with the 4 spot being Luzardo. And I think I'm making this bold proclamation right now. I think Jesus Luzardo is about to have one of the biggest seasons of his career this year. Now that he's out of Miami, where, yes, they do have Alcantara, but I think Luzardo did not want to pitch in Miami, and I don't blame him. Look what the Marlins are doing. They are trading off a lot of assets, including pitchers, which I'm going to make something. I'm going to say something right now before I get to number 5 on my number 7 on my list of the top 10 rotations going into the 2025 season. I think Sandy Alcantara will be the next Marlin traded either before the deadline or at the deadline or earlier than that if somebody ends up getting an injury to their starting rotation, which, again, we don't wish injuries upon anybody. They just end up happening in weird ways, and that opens the door for a trade. But my number 7 starting rotation going into the 2025 season, the Mets are in my top. Well, the Mets were in my top 10, but we don't know who's going to. And yes, let's go Mets. But we don't know who is their 2 and 3 are going to be in a rotation because Frankie Montas is out. And so is Sean Manaea. But anyway, back to my number 7 starting rotation going into the 2025 season is the Kansas City Royals. No, it's not. And I'm surprised y'all haven't reached out to the Padres about Dylan Cease, who I will bring up later in the show via trade, or reached out to a guy like Jose Quintana and see if he wants to re-sign with the Mets. Who do you think your 2 and 3 will be in your rotation going into the start of the season? Anyway, like I was saying, the Kansas City Royals are my number 7 pitching rotation going into the 2025 season, with a rotation that consists of Chris Bubich, Mike Lorenzen, Michael Wacha, Seth Lugo, and a guy that's probably going to win 1 or 2 Cy Youngs within the next couple of years, and Cole Reagans. This is probably my 2nd or 3rd favorite rotation in baseball. And it's unfortunate because my number, there's a couple other rotations that I think are better than the Royals, but I just feel that Kansas City, they have a lot of potential this year. My number 6 starting rotation going into the 2025 season is the Arizona Diamondbacks, with a rotation that has, again, it's young. It has a couple young guys in it. And, well, one young guy who's competing for that 5th spot, which I think he's going to win it. And Brandon Pfaadt over a guy like Jordan Montgomery, who's probably either going to get traded or moved to the bullpen. Then you've got in the 4th spot, Eduardo Rodriguez. Now, I have a question for my Diamondbacks fans. What Eduardo Rodriguez are we going to get? Are we going to get the one we got in Detroit or Boston or one of the other teams he's played for? Or are we going to get the one we got last year where he was hurt for half of the year and then came back and did, quite frankly, looked awful? Then we've got in the 3 spot, we've got Merrill Kelly, Zach Gallen in the 2, and their big free agency signing, which I'm surprised the Mets weren't in on him, that being Corbin Burns. I like this rotation a lot, but I like my number 5 rotation going into the 2025 season even better, and it's the Cleveland Guardians, with a rotation consisting of one of the Guardians' top pitching prospects, and Joey Cantillo, Ben Lively, Luis Ortiz, who I think is going to break out this year, Gavin Williams, and Tanner Bybee. This rotation has potential to be good. And don't forget, yes, he did re-sign with them, Shane Bieber. He's probably going to start the year on the IL, but he'll be back within the first couple months of the season. And that would make this rotation even better, because then you can move one of Lively or Cantillo to the bullpen, or I believe they do have options left under contract where they can be sent back down to AAA, where they can start every 5th day and continue to be stretched out. So in case another injury does happen. And then you've also got another guy, Tristan McKenzie, who I think him and Cantillo are the ones competing for that 5th spot. McKenzie's had a good spring. I wouldn't be surprised if we see maybe a 6-man rotation for the first couple weeks of the season for the Guardians. My number 4 starting rotation, and I wanted to put them in the top 3, but there's 3 other teams that have a better rotation than them. It is the Boston Red Sox, with a rotation consisting of Lucas Giolito, Walker Buehler, Brian Bayo, Tanner Houck, and Garrett Crochet. I was surprised when the Red Sox went out and made the trade for Garrett Crochet, because I know some Red Sox fans, and they kept telling me, Alec, the Red Sox are not going to spend money. What did they do this offseason? Traded for Garrett Crochet, signed Alex Bregman. They got Liam Hendricks back. Trevor Story's coming back. This is going to be the 4th best rotation in Major League Baseball this year, in my opinion. Now we get to my top 3. My number 3 rotation going into the 2025 season, and it's going to surprise some people. No, it is not the Brewers. No, it is not the Blue Jays. No, it is not the Padres. It is the Tampa Bay Rays, with a completely healthy rotation. Yes, I said it, completely healthy. Shane McClanahan back. So your 5 starter is Zach Littell. 4, Taj Bradley, who I think is going to have a massive season this year. Massive. Number 3 in the rotation is Shane Baz. But I think the Rays are another team that could potentially do a 6-man rotation, because Drew Rasmussen has also been stretched out to be going back into the rotation. So number two, Ryan Pepiot, and the Mac is back. And the ace of the rotation, Shane McClanahan. Sugar Shane. 3rd best rotation, in my opinion. A lot of potential here with Taj Bradley, Shane Baz, Ryan Pepiot, and then maybe down the road, maybe Ian Seymour, Nick Bitsko, Dylan Lesko. There's a lot of potential with this rotation. Even Drew Rasmussen. And maybe you move a guy like Zach Littell to the bullpen. Number 2 starting rotation going into 2025 season for me is the Detroit Tigers, with a rotation consisting of Jackson Jobe, Casey Mize, Reese Olson, Jack Flaherty, and the reigning AL Cy Young winner, Tarek Skubal. This is the second best rotation for me in Major League Baseball going into 2025. I think that there's a lot of potential for maybe a Tarek Skubal to win the AL Cy Young again. And my number one rotation going into the 2025 season in Major League Baseball, and it pains me to say this, is the Los Angeles Dodgers, with a rotation consisting of Roki Sasaki, Tyler Glasnow, Blake Snell, Shohei Ohtani, and Yoshinobu Yamamoto. And you could throw Clayton Kershaw in there. He's penciled in to probably make 10 to 15 starts. So that's a 6-man rotation. Plus, you got Dustin May in the bullpen. Tony Gonsolin probably in the bullpen. Justin Robleski probably in the bullpen at some point. Gavin Stone when he comes back. Bobby Miller. It's an embarrassment of riches with the Dodgers. Like, come on. It's an embarrassment of riches. Now we get to my 2025 AL East standings predictions for the 2025 season. And Blue Jays fans, you're not going to like me. Finishing in 5th place with a record of 79-98 is the Toronto Blue Jays. Yes, I do think the Blue Jays make a little bit of an improvement. But the issue is, are we going to get a full year, no injuries out of Bo Bichette? What Vladdy are we going to get in a walk here? Because I don't think Vladdy's re-signing. Like I said earlier, I don't think Vladdy's going to re-sign with Toronto. And are we going to get a full... Is that rotation going to stay healthy the entire season for the Blue Jays? Because they did have some injuries to the rotation last year. Orioles fans, you're not going to like this. I have the Orioles. I have 4 teams in the American League East finishing with over 90 wins. And 4th place is the Baltimore Orioles going 91-76. I like all the young talent you have and all the prospects you have coming up through the farm system. But it's going to be murder's row in the AL East. And if you're gonna come out here and tell me, oh, that doesn't matter, Baltimore's still gonna probably win the division or finish 2nd or 3rd. I can see that happening, but at the same time, I can also see Baltimore finishing 4th with 91 wins. Finishing 3rd. And the key to this is the Tampa Bay Rays going 92-87. I think if the Rays stay completely healthy throughout the season, and I'm looking at one guy in particular, 2 guys actually, Brandon Lau and Pete Fairbanks. Because if you look at Brandon Lau's injury history, just look it up. It's going to take you a while to read it because he's been injured a lot. And I think the Rays, if they can stay healthy, will finish 3rd in this division. Finishing 2nd in the AL East with a record of 93-84 is the New York Yankees. Yes, Yankees fans, I am ready for you to slander me in the comments and tell me why I'm wrong. You lost Juan Soto. You lost Clay Holmes. And I understand Clay Holmes wasn't very good when he was your closer last year. But that's still a big loss. And I mean, yes, you did go out and get Paul Goldschmidt. You went out and got Cody Bellinger. You went out and signed Max Fried. What are you going to do with Marcus Stroman? He obviously wants to be a starter, and you don't have a spot in your rotation for him. Because I went over your rotation earlier. unless you plan on moving a guy like Luis Heel or Clark Schmidt to the bullpen, there's no way that Stroman's going to be a Yankee by the end of the season. And winning the division, going 97-74, is your AL East champs, the Boston Red Sox. I give them an A+ for what they did this offseason. Trading for Garrett Crochet, signing Alex Bregman, signing Walker Buehler, who I forgot about. And I think now that Walker Buehler's out of LA, he's actually going to do better in Boston. And I don't think the Red Sox, I'm going to say this right now, I don't think Boston's done making moves. There's been rumors circulating out there that they've been talking to San Diego about acquiring one Dylan Cease, who I might just talk about in the next segment. If they get Dylan Cease, yeah, it's probably a foregone conclusion that they win this division. And to wrap up this episode, I have 4 trades here that I think will happen at some point this season, whether it be toward the end of spring training, before the trade deadline, or at the trade deadline. My number 4 trade, and I've been trying to get this one to happen all offseason. Yandy Diaz from, oh wait, no. Timeout, pause. We are going to briefly talk about Stu Sternberg, the Rays owner, potentially selling the team. So there was a article / interview with JP Peterson of 620 WDAE in Tampa, where he was talking about there's this group of people out there that want to buy the Rays from Stu Sternberg. And it's a Tampa-based group. And yes, we've heard this. We've heard these rumors before that Sternberg wants to. We've heard these rumors before, but they've all been smokescreens that Stu Sternberg wants to sell the Rays. This one, I'm buying into it a little more because it's a group out of Tampa. For the sake of them, I don't know their names. All I know is that they want to purchase the Rays. And if Sternberg needs to, and I've said it, I don't know how many times on different podcasts I've done on my channel, that Stu Sternberg really needs to think about selling the team and selling the team to somebody that's going to spend money on the team, on a stadium in Tampa. Because this is a joke to put the new stadium in St. Pete. We are one of the worst attendance in the MLB. Nobody's going to drive an hour from Tampa to St. Pete to see a Rays game compared to if you put it in Tampa somewhere and say somebody lives in Tampa. Oh, I'll drive 30 minutes to go see the Rays play compared to, I ain't going to drive an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours with traffic to St. Pete to see the Rays play. And I mean, there's a couple. Sternberg he really needs to lean into this, selling the team. When I get more updates, I will keep everybody informed. The Baseball Banter podcast is kicking into high gear. Because we are almost, opening day is right around the corner. If you don't want to miss any Baseball Banter podcast, excuse me, please remember to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications. You can also find the Baseball Banter podcast over on YouTube Music if you want to listen to the audio version of the podcast. But back to the show. So that's that. Now we get to trades that I think will happen either at the trade deadline, before the trade deadline, maybe before spring training ends. And we start with number 4. Yandy Diaz to the Cincinnati Reds for prospects and Christian Encarnacion Strand. What are the Reds missing? I like CES. He's young, but they need a veteran guy that can hit 300 with 15 to 20 home runs, play really good defense at first base. Not saying CES can't, Christian Encarnacion Strand can't do that, but I think if the Reds want to contend this year, and tomorrow afternoon at noon on the podcast, I will have my NL Central standings prediction, AL Central, and NL East standings prediction. So meet the Mets. Be looking out for that. Anyway, I think Yandy would fit perfect with that young core in Cincinnati. But the thing is, would the Reds do this? What is the percent chance they say yes to a trade that includes CES and probably some lower level prospects that probably are blocked and won't get up to the big leagues with Cincinnati? I would say 85% chance they say yes. My number 3 trade is an interesting trade, and it is the New York Mets trading for Luis Robert. In exchange, they give the White Sox Sterling Marte, basically a salary cap dump. And this would put the Mets, because I know Brendan Nemo is going to play center field. You could put, and Soto's going to be in right. I don't know. You could put Luis Robert in left field. You could put him at DH. You can have him split time between left field and DH. And that makes your outfield a whole lot better than it already was with Nemo and Soto. And now you add Robert to left field. Or you could slide Nemo over to left and put Robert in center. And look at your outfield. It's even better now. So that was number 3. My number 2 trade. And I just talked about this team a minute ago. The Boston Red Sox. I think Dylan Cease gets traded to the Red Sox for prospects. I don't know what the package looks like going back the way of San Diego. I think Dylan Cease would fit right in with Boston. And that would make Boston hands down the favorite in the American League to make it to the World Series. And my number 1 trade that I think will happen in MLB in 2025 at some point is Marcus Stroman to the Mets for a salary dump. Yes. Stroman wants out. It's clear. Stroman wants out of New York. We've already seen this. Stroman wants he wants off the Yankees. And there's a bevy of teams that could use starting pitching help. I'll name off 2 or 3 right now. The Mets with Montas and Manaea going down. The Marlins. And the Marlins is because they need to take on money. They need to get over the luxury tax, the whatever they call it in the state. They need to take on money. And if they don't, they'll have a grievance coming against them from MLB. And the last team I could think of is the Texas Rangers. And here's a preview of what to expect on the podcast tomorrow morning. We will be going over my top 10 shortstops going into the 2025 MLB season. We will also be going over my NL Central predictions, as well as prospects to watch in spring training, and AL Central and NL East standings predictions. And I will also give you a little preview of what to expect tomorrow night on this said podcast at 5:45. Part 1 of our MLB predictions, official World Series picks, Rookie of the Year picks officially, predicting opening day starters for the Diamondbacks, the Red Sox, the Nationals, the Reds, and the Orioles. Our official MLB manager's hot seat, and much more. But if you've enjoyed this podcast, please, like I said, remember to leave a like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comment section of this video. For the Baseball Banter podcast, this is Alec Pecano signing off. See you tomorrow morning. See you tomorrow afternoon at 12 p.m.